Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Big Game Bound. I'm Jack Doles, and 2 weeks into the NFL season, there are only 10 teams left in this league that haven't lost a game. But the story in week 2 is the injuries to future Hall of Fame quarterbacks and a changing of the guard in New York. Here's the rundown. What the Halleck? Ty Halleck will come in and break down one of the big matchups. Also let you know who his top 5 teams are in the NFL right now. The big shout out will let you know who the players of the week are. Big matchups, Ravens versus Chiefs, Rams versus Browns. We'll talk about those. The big guest, Reginald Brown, an esports standout. You'll want to hear his story. And the big decision, Bob Harris from footballdiehards.com will help you set up your fantasy football teams. All right, we'll start with our big shout outs to the NFC Player of the Week first. On offense, quarterback Russell Wilson. He was on the mark in Seattle's win over the Steelers, completed 29 of 35 passes and 3 touchdown passes. The NFC Defensive Player of the Week is Tampa linebacker Shaq Barrett, who sacked Cam Newton 3 times in the Bucs win over the Panthers. AFC Defensive Player of the Week, Texans linebacker Whitney Mercilus. He forced 2 fumbles in the Texans' win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. While the AFC Offensive Player of the Week is Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. This was a no-brainer decision. He threw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in their win over the Raiders. Mahomes and the Chiefs are 2-0. Time for What the Halleck. Ty Halleck joins us in studio each week. He played for the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, Jacksonville Jaguars during his playing career. Adds great insight to the show. Ty, brutal weekend for quarterbacks. Cam Newton gets hurt again. Roethlisberger out for the year. Drew Brees needs thumb surgery. What happens in a locker room when you lose somebody that important to your team?
Well, I mean, I think a quarterback is something that everybody relates to. Everybody wants to be part of what they're doing. And quite frankly, you know, from a franchise perspective, these guys spend all this money on these guys for a reason, because they kind of craft their offenses and even their defenses around what their talents are. And so many times the guys behind them aren't really those same guys. It's hard to figure out and have that backup that really matches kind of what you have. I mean, in Roethlisberger's case, you got Mason Rudolph, a younger guy who, you know, could do some things, maybe, you know, a la Ben Roethlisberger, but he's a very different talent. You talk about Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Brees, very different quarterbacks. And Teddy Bridgewater's been out for a while with some injuries, et cetera. Now he's down in New Orleans, an opportunity for him to show what he can showcase. But from a locker room perspective, it's kind of like, you know, Houston, we've got a problem. However, everybody's got to elevate their game, and you want to be supportive of those guys, even though you think they might not be quite the same guy. I think of the 2, and actually of the 3, really, if you look at it, Drew Brees getting out of the New Orleans Saints rotation and not quite knowing what's going on with that thumb until after surgery really is a situation that's a lot tougher than the others. Yeah. But they're all tough. And quite frankly, when you look at the teams that will struggle here in the early part of the season, a lot of it has to do with that quarterback play.
Yeah, and that's a Super Bowl team that loses its undisputed leader. Coaches on the hot seat right now. I mean, we've only 2 weeks in, we've only got 10 teams that haven't lost a game.
Yeah, I mean, when you really look at this, I mean, the list really hasn't changed from even walking into the season. Jay Gruden with the Washington Redskins. You know, what's interesting about this to me, when you look at this across the board, whether it's Jay Gruden, Pat Shurmur, Mike Tomlin, Ron Rivera, or Doug Marrone, you look at all these situations, every single one of them, quite frankly, Jack, is a quarterback issue. Not only do you have a situation where you have to, you know, attain a high level of offensive output and wins. Now you're going to do it with, in Pat Shurmur's case as an example, it's Eli Manning, who's, you know, significantly older, and they needed to make a move. Does Daniel Jones actually give you that opportunity? Well, Pat Shurmur's not waiting. He knows he's in the hot seat. He's got to make that move. Doug Marrone, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, not unlike the quarterbacks we were just talking about, right out of the gates, they go and get themselves a franchise quarterback, and all of a sudden he's going to Minshew, who's a backup, because Nick Foles gets hurt, and he thought he had a franchise quarterback. So sometimes as a head coach, whether you're in the hot seat or not, it's a very difficult situation when you're asked to win, and then all of a sudden you have a franchise quarterback situation that's uncertain.
Do you think Shurmur and the Giants waited too long on Eli to pull the trigger on this move?
Well, I don't know if it was Shurmur and the Giants, to be honest with you. I look at it more as a management issue. I mean, when Shurmur came in, there was a clear, concise opportunity to make that move. and they chose to kind of hang tight. I think Daniel Jones is going to be interesting to see what he does. There's a lot of people in the league, I think half of them that thinks that he's that guy that could get there, and certainly with reps in the National Football League, you'll get there. But at the same token, he's untested. So they're going to make that shot. They're going to take that shot, and I think Pat Shurmur, rightfully so, for the seat he's in currently, that's the right move to make.
All right, so the Browns just beat the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. Now they've got the LA Rams on Sunday night on NBC. What does a Brown win in that game do for that franchise right now?
Well, I think it's significant because when you look at what's coming next, the Ravens, the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Patriots, all teams that are winning right now, that are playing well, teams that we could talk about that are surprises in the 49ers with Garoppolo playing well. Shanahan has him doing what he wants him to do, and they're winning football games. So this doesn't get any easier for the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens have to take advantage of Lamar Jackson, Hollywood Brown, these guys that are doing well early. They got to come out, do the things that they've been doing, but they have to win now because the next 5 games total, including this Rams game, is going to be absolutely brutal.
What did the Rams show you in their win over the Saints? Obviously without Drew Brees, but still impressive.
Well, I think what the Rams show you ultimately is that defense drives that team. Certainly they're a good offensive team, and McVay has those guys doing things good offensively, but I think it's the defense that leads it. This defense that got to Drew Brees, this defense that hurt him, and they will do that to other opposing quarterbacks and offenses because they're very, very physical on the front line.
I know you had a shakeup in your top 5. You got the Ravens number 5 this week.
Yeah, I do. Ravens number 5. I think Lamar Jackson and what he's doing with Brown as a receiver and just their team overall puts them into that deal. Dallas Cowboys come out of not nowhere, but what Moore's doing with that offense and the overall feel of what they're being able to do to run and pass the football, I think they're solidified. The LA Rams because of that defense. Kansas City, I let jump up a little bit because I think offensively they're good. There's some young guns that are going to battle this week with Kansas City in that game, and then the New England Patriots. The one thing that surprises me most about the New England Patriots is not Tom Brady in the offense and what he's able to do, but this defense has really solidified and seems to be very tough. And Bill Belichick consistently does it with a bunch of guys that, quite frankly, they're not the top-end shelf guys. They're just guys that show up, they bring their bucket, a lunch, and they just get after it. It's fun to watch.
And usually their struggles are at the beginning of the year. How scary is this to the rest of the NFL that 2 weeks into the season they've given up 3 points and they've scored more than they've given up?
Well, I think it's scary for the National Football League, but if you're talking about the New York Giants of old, remember these guys almost went 20-0, right? I mean, and it looks like that reminiscent team. The reality of it is these are tough, hard-fought battles, and nobody knows it better than Bill Belichick of what it takes to win week in and week out, but also get it later in the season, and that's what I'm sure he's focused on. Take it week by week, but also get to that late season. But early on, there's no question, the New England Patriots really have set the bar, and there's a lot of teams in between. We could go to teams 5 through 10, and you'd still see a lot of good football teams there that are in that mix that you wonder, how are they going to do as things start to play out and they get into, like the Cleveland Browns. They get 5 games in a row, they play playoff-type teams.
There is only one game this week, one featuring undefeated teams. Hard to believe we have a scenario like that in week 3, but here we are. It's the Ravens and Chiefs, 1 o'clock start at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday. So let's bring in our big game-bound correspondent to talk about this matchup. Dan Lucy covers the Chiefs in Springfield, Missouri. Dan, it's only week 3, but does this have a playoff game feel to it?
Oh, definitely has a playoff. You talk about 2 undefeated teams. You're talking about a Baltimore Ravens team that has really given the Kansas City Chiefs fits over the years. Now, the Chiefs have won the last 2 games played against Baltimore, but the Ravens won the 4 games played before that. So the Chiefs have improved and gotten to be where they're competitive. Last year's game, the Chiefs won at Arrowhead in overtime by a field goal. So that'll tell you how close this game could be. And the other thing about it is that it is Kansas City's home opener. They were on the road for the first 2 weeks. So all of the excitement is about restarting this team and getting back to where they were at the end of last year when they lost in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, impressive to open the season with 2 wins on the road. You know, before the season started, a lot of the so-called experts said Patrick Mahomes would regress from last year. He would have to because he was so good. Is it possible he's even better?
Well, it is possible, and when we're recording this this conversation right now, it's Patrick Mahomes' 24th birthday. So I'm not going to say anything disparaging about him on his 24th birthday, but I mean, how can you top last year, all that he was able to do, 50 touchdowns, winning the MVP for the National Football League, but he really has come out of the blocks hot. That second quarter that he had against the Oakland Raiders on Sunday, they scored 28 points. He threw for 278 yards. That's the second biggest quarter in the history of NFL football. Only Drew Brees had a bigger quarter with yards passing and touchdowns. So, yeah, he is right on the top of his game, hasn't missed a beat, and he's got so many weapons that he can throw to, despite the fact that Tyreek Hill is out with that collarbone injury.
Yeah, he throws an amazing deep ball. Damian Williams left the game with a knee injury. LaShawn McCoy has an MRI on his ankle. Who's going to carry the ball for the Chiefs in this game?
Two running backs there. A couple of things. Let's take McCoy first. Shady. They're saying no significant damage on his ankle after the MRI yesterday, so he should probably practice this week and be able to play against the Ravens. Damian Williams, a knee contusion there. They're not exactly as positive about that. I don't think he's going to be out for too long. He may not be able to play. However, they've got Darwin Thompson back there, who was a 6th-round draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he had a great preseason. You know how they do it. They get the late round guys that run all the plays late in the games and the exhibitions. He played the whole 4th exhibition game. He really did well in the preseason. So Darwin Thompson could get some runs at running back, but I think that both Williams and McCoy will probably be playing on Sunday against the Ravens.
All right, now defense was the big concern coming into this season. They held the Raiders to just 10 points. How much improvement have you seen with this Chiefs defense?
I think there's some improvement. Now, the Oakland Raiders scored the first 10 points of that game, and everybody kind of took a pause for a second. You know, it's Spagnuolo's first year as the defensive coordinator, and they switched to a 4-3 defense, so there's a lot of different parts in there doing some things, but the defense did not panic at all. Mahomes got the team back in it, and then they shut them down in the second quarter, second half of that game in Oakland, a lot of interceptions. You've got, of course, the trade with Frank Clark with the Seattle Seahawks that brought Frank Clark over on the defensive end, and then Tyrann Mathieu coming in and playing in the safety position. Those guys have added some veteran experience to the team, and Kendall Fuller has really played well at the cornerback. He leads the team with 13 tackles so far. He got a pick last time, so the defense is really stepping up, really learning their roles now, and I think that they're very anxious to show off what they can do in front of the Arrowhead crowd, because, you know, that was the big Achilles heel last year, was the defense. They gave up a lot of plays. Everything's changed, and they're anxious to show that they've really improved going into Sunday's game against Baltimore.
For the Baltimore perspective, we bring in our Ravens correspondent, Damon Turbett from WHTM TV. How much are you looking forward to this quarterback matchup, Damon?
Well, it's going to be a fantastic matchup. I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes, you look at Lamar Jackson. I don't think you can say two guys have been more exciting this season so far in the NFL. Obviously, Mahomes was last year's MVP, and we've seen what Jackson did when he came in for Flacco last season, what he's done so far this year. It's going to be a fantastic matchup, and you just have to look at the fact that these are two young guys who are coming in a marquee matchup that everybody's looking forward to. We've seen older guys go down even just in the last week with Roethlisberger, Breeze, but there's also Brady. The older guys have kind of run the NFL for the better part of a decade, the last 15 years even. So to have a matchup where you have two really young quarterbacks that everybody's excited about, it's got me excited too.
Yeah, they're so fun to watch. Ravens made that bold move, trading Joe Flacco, a guy who helped them get a ring, gave the keys to the kingdom to Lamar Jackson. So far, so good. He's been unreal. Is this too small of a sample size to say he's this year's Patrick Mahomes, or are we seeing the beginnings of something very special in Baltimore?
Well, that's the thing. It is very hard because you watch the first 2 weeks and the way Lamar Jackson looked like in the first 4 minutes of that game against Miami. He looked like a completely different quarterback. Everyone basically was calling him a glorified running back last year. And then he came out and he said, look, I got an arm too, and that's a scary sight. But I do want to say we'll have to wait and see here. This is only 2 games into the season against arguably what could be the 2 worst teams in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. But at the same time, he showed his skill set has broadened, and I think he's going to have another great week, but we just got to take it 1 week at a time with him, and as the competition gets a little bit stiffer in these next few weeks, I think we'll have a more clear answer.
Yeah, and the legend can grow with a big game. So the Ravens had 5 wins in 2015, 8 wins in 16, 9 in 17, 10 last year, made the playoffs. Does it feel like they're building something special here?
I think something is definitely brewing. You know, especially going into this year, people said that they were arguably going to finish in second in the AFC North behind the Steelers. But after the great season that the Ravens had last year, Steelers didn't make the playoffs. The Ravens did. Like you said, they've improved their win totals over the last 5 years or so. And it looks like they might even have a chance to get over that 10-win hump, which isn't necessarily an easy thing to do given the schedule that they have. I think that they are building something special. Their defense is also something that people aren't talking enough about. When you have a guy as electric and as exciting as Jackson, sometimes you overlook the defensive side of the ball, but the Ravens have, I believe, given up the fewest or second fewest yards per game in the NFL right now. Obviously, part of that is because the Ravens' offense has dominated the time of possession, but at the same time, the defense is keeping themselves off the field. So overall, it looks like both sides are finding some balance. Even though you're losing a guy like Terrell Suggs, you lose a guy like Weddle, you know, obviously Ed Reed and Ray Lewis are long gone now, but they still have both pieces together, and this year it seems like something's brewing here.
All right, we've got another great guest for you this week. Did you know that the esports industry is expected to top the $1 billion mark in revenue this year? Moms and dads, how many times have you told your kids to put the controller down and do their homework? Well, some guys are making good money playing esports, and we're going to talk to one of them right now. Reggie Brown is one of the top Madden players in the country. He's known as Boogs on the circuit. Reggie, you've made some deep runs in a ton of tournaments, still chasing that first belt. What would that mean to you?
I mean, that would mean that's pretty much that final piece to the puzzle. I've done pretty much everything that's possible in Madden so far. So just being able to finally win a belt after being so close so many times. I mean, I guess I know what the Buffalo Bills felt like in the 90s, just getting so close so many times. So I'm ready to just finally just get that little relief.
All right, so you represent the Lions of all teams. Why the Detroit Lions?
Well, I was born and raised in Detroit. Grew up in Detroit all my life. Left there and moved to Atlanta in about 2010, I think. I left in 2010, and so, you know, Detroit is my home, so it's everything I live and breathe is Detroit. My family's still there, so, and I love the Lions. I grew up a Barry Sanders fan, so that's pretty much why I'm a diehard Lions fan.
How do you get really good at this? I mean, the only chance when I play my kids that I have is when the machine makes the right play call and they mess up.
A lot of time. It's a lot of time, and honestly, it's just like anything else in life, you know, where you just put in a lot of practice, a lot of work, and then also I tell people all the time, I mean, you are who you hang around. So if you're hanging around 5 guys that aren't very good at Madden, then you're going to become the 6th guy that isn't very good at Madden. But if you're hanging around guys that are really high level, then you're going to take your game to another level. And in this world with Twitch and, you know, YouTube and stuff like that, you don't necessarily have to have access to them personally. You just have to be able to watch them and consume whatever content they're putting out. Or if you can get it connected with them and hang out with them in parties, Xbox parties or something like that, then that's another way that you can kind of take your game to another level.
So coaches and players, they do a lot of film work and prep. How much prep do you do when you're playing an opponent?
Countless hours. Especially as the closer it is to tournament time, I spend anywhere from 10 to 14, 16 hours a day just working on a lot of different things just to try to fine tune my game and make sure it's tip top. But when it's not like when it's not like a week or two out from a tournament, I have ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'll spend 8 to 12 hours, and sometimes I spend 2 to 4 hours because I have a family. So I can't, give all of my time to Madden every single day of, 24/7.
What's it like when you're in that chair in the heat of competition? How focused, how locked in are you?
Super locked in. You really kind of just zone out. The world doesn't even exist. You really just kind of lock into your opponent, and you don't notice anything. You don't know, what's going on in the outside world. For those a game typically takes about 45 minutes. I mean, my wife and daughters don't even exist for that 45 minutes, so to speak. So yeah, it's just super locked in and ready to go.
And this is you've got a wife and 2 kids. This is a full-time job for you? This is it?
Yeah, this is a full-time job for me. Everything I do, I eat, live, and sleep this. This is exactly what I do. I play Madden competitively. I stream every day. I'm fresh. As you can see, my green screen's behind me. Right before we got on this interview, I just got done streaming. I stream on Twitch every day. So that I do that, and I travel every week to do commentary for Madden and prepare for tournaments. It's a lot of different things I do. Just all of it's centered around Madden and esports.
One of the biggest stories in sports this year was that tragic shooting in Jacksonville at the Madden tournament. You were the last person to play David Katz before he started shooting. How has that impacted your life?
It's impacted my life in so many different ways. Just even hearing that name, I mean, it's been a year now. It kind of gave me chills a little bit just even hearing that name. But it's changed my life in so many different ways. Me and my wife, my daughter just had a birthday party, for example, and we took her to, I think the place is called Andretti's or something like that. But anyway, I can't even completely enjoy my daughter's birthday party because I kind of got zoned out and kind of just thinking about circumstances in Jacksonville, and it takes my awareness to an all-time high. It's extremely heightened, and I'm just thinking about what if this happens? What do I do to make sure that my daughter is okay and make sure she gets out safe, make sure my wife gets out safe, or her friends, the kids and everyone that's around. And so it's just anytime I'm in a public place, especially a place that kind of reminds me, that gives me, a feel of that bar that we were at that day. Anytime I get that feeling, it really kind of zones me out sometimes. So it's changed my life forever for the most part, and it's connected me to everyone that was in that room. Forever, we'll forever have a brotherhood and sisterhood for the women that were in there, that would forever keep us connected. And it's just one of those things where everything is just taken day by day.
Do you feel safe when you go to these bigger tournaments that are in public venues now?
Yeah, the security has gone to a whole new level now just because of that event. Now everyone is aware that it's not even safe to play Madden anymore. That's one of those. Madden has always been like my safe haven, for myself and a lot of people around the world. And now, even that, you think, you go out into a public place, you're just thinking like something can even happen here. So because of that, the security has gone up to a very high level. Everyone's, you can't even. There's no exceptions. Pretty much, there's no exceptions. There's no bending of the rules. There's no, if you aren't on the list, if you don't belong there, you're not even allowed, within 100 feet of the venue. So a lot of police officers. So it's definitely safe now. But you're always still looking for exits and looking for your way out just in case something happens.
Yeah, Reggie, you were in that room. You were right near him. When you see these stories about the shootings that continue to happen around this country, what does that do to your heart?
I mean, I know how they feel. I mean, I know how the families feel, and just how those calls are when you have to call home and say something has happened like that. And so every time I hear about something like this, I'm really just thinking about how can we prevent stuff like this from ever happening again? What are the things that can be done? Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's, people are hurt. Not only the people that are being hurt, but the people that are actually doing the shooting or whatever they're doing to hurt these people. Obviously, somebody's hurt and something's going wrong. How can we help everyone to prevent this stuff from happening?
All right, Reggie, thank you so much for sharing that, and continued success in your quest for the belt, a Madden belt.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. Appreciate you reaching out and allowing me to come on here and speak with you guys. And I'm just thankful for life. I'm thankful for everything. So I appreciate you.
Time for the big decision now. We're going to help you fill out your fantasy football roster. For that, we call on football diehard Bob Harris from footballdiehards.com. Bob, so many injuries at quarterback and roster moves being made. Are there any replacements worth picking up, like Jones in New York, Bridgewater in New Orleans?
You didn't mention Luke Fall. Come on, yes, Kyle Allen maybe. Cam Newton is ailing. Look, I think all these guys, if you're in a regular format of fantasy football or you're in a standard season-long single quarterback league, no. Maybe you could, if you have room at the end of your bench, you add one as a speculative play. Look, Daniel Jones looked very good this summer. Danny Dimes, as they called him, was throwing dimes. So I'm not averse to keeping these guys at the bottom of your roster. I'm not forcing any of them into my lineups this week. And I mean, that doesn't mean you should avoid everybody associated with them, but no need to take that chance. There's plenty of quarterbacks to go around. If you're in super flex leagues or leagues where you can play 2 quarterbacks, that might be a different discussion. You might be forced to.
All right, Che Kang sent a question in via Twitter. Juju without Ben, sit or start for week 3? He has Christian Kirk and John Brown on his bench.
Look, those are pretty viable options. I'm not going to give up hope on Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Mason Rudolph came out and looked pretty good, hit 12 of 19, replacing Ben Roethlisberger. There is some speculation from among the local press that this leads to maybe more creative play calling. Maybe we got a hint of that. They threw a 45-yard flea flicker or two, Juju Smith-Schuster. So there is hope. In this case, I think you have some viable options. I wouldn't blame you for benching Juju, but don't expect that to be an ongoing thing. I think Rudolph will pick up the pace.
All right, Spencer wants to know, he's been offered a trade. He gives up Michael Thomas, D.D. Westbrook for Marquise Brown and Calvin Ridley. What's Thomas's value without Drew Brees?
Boy, it diminishes some. It has to. I mean, we're hoping Teddy Bridgewater looks good with a week of practice or a full week running the offense, but he was completely off kilter in replacing Brees against the Rams. So I'm a little concerned there over the course of the season. Don't know if I'm that concerned. I'd ask for a little more. I love Marquise Brown. Look, I love Lamar Jackson. I think that offense is going great guns and they're going to revolutionize things. Calvin Ridley is a fine piece in association with him. So I don't think it's an unfair offer. I'm not sure I'm ready to give up on my investment in Michael Thomas just yet. Maybe ask for a little more.
Charlie Ham wants to know, will the Broncos backfield iron out a running back one, or will they continue with this 50-50 split?
I should stipulate here, last summer I was maybe not the driver of the Royce Freeman hype train, but I was the conductor. For sure. And I'm a little bit on him now. Look, a new defensive-minded coach comes in, Vic Fangio. They don't have a great passing attack. Maybe they want to rely a little more on the run. Royce Freeman carried the ball, 11 times for 54 yards, had 5 catches for another 48 against the Bears. Outproduced Phillip Lindsay on 1 fewer touch. I think it remains a 50-50 split for now, but I could see this heading in Freeman's direction. I would be kind of trying to get in front of that if I could.
All right, that Chiefs backfield is really banged up. Is there a deep dive in there that you would grab right now?
You should be rostering guys like Darwin Thompson. I don't know if Darrell Williams, the 4th back on that roster, is a guy you want to have, but if you look at the injury situations and you have Damian Williams or LaShawn McCoy on your roster now, and you have room to add Darrell Williams, do it as kind of a precautionary measure. Both those guys, Damian Williams and McCoy, are a little nicked up. Sounds like they're trending towards playing, or at least the injuries aren't severe. But if you need a week, boy, this thing is going to be a track meet against the Ravens. I want a piece of that Chiefs offense if I can get it.
All right, Bob, this isn't fantasy football. I saw a tweet you sent out with a picture of you from your 45th birthday. Life-changing transformation. How did you do it? You've lost about 200 pounds. How did you do this?
Just long-term persistence. Took a very long-term outlook and just started counting calories, exercising a little bit every day until I could do a little more. And just basically lifestyle changes is what it's all about. Making better decisions. Surprising how helpful that can be.
Well, you look great. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. And if you want more from Bob, he is on Sirius XM Channel 87. The show is 6 to 8 every day, and you'll see him here on Big Game Bound each week. So, Bob, we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, that'll wrap up Week 3 of Big Game Bound. We'll be right here every Thursday during the NFL season with a new episode streaming at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Our big shout-outs to Reggie Brown, Dan Lucy, Damon Turbot, our producer Spencer Wheelock, and our crew. I'm Jack Doles. Enjoy Week 3 of the National Football League.